This is BIOS 1. It's 6 o'clock.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of RFL. I'm Richard French. As you can see, we are not joining you from our typical studios. Instead, we're coming to you from Rye Brook, New York, which is in Westchester County, and we've got a special evening planned for you. Tonight, we're going to bring you the first in a series of 4 debates in key races in New York State. Now, these debates, they are part of the Westchester County Association's Call to Action campaign. It's a campaign centered around governmental reform. And we are going to be focusing on that issue and many others over the course of the next hour. And I encourage everyone to visit the website at the bottom of your screen for both schedule and information. As I mentioned before, this is the first of 4 debates that we're going to be having over the course of the next month. Now, before we begin, I think one thing we can agree on in this election season, regardless of your politics, is it has been a very contentious summer and fall. So many key issues, many questions, whether it be Washington or in state houses, are up to the voter, and it's an angry electorate. We're going to get into the key issues that really define that anger and hopefully get some answers about what lies ahead for both the Empire State, Albany, and for the district that we'll be covering this evening. So let's begin. As I said, for the next hour, our focus is New York State Senate District 38. And at this point, I want to introduce the candidates. We begin with incumbent Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who's running on the Democratic and Working Family Party lines. And she's also joined by her opponent, McLaughlin. He represents the Republican and the Conservative Party lines. Let's give a hand here to the candidates. One important correction, 35th District, before I get everyone too nervous here. All right. Now, let's get into what we're going to do over the next hour. To help me with that, I want to bring in my co-moderator, Karen McBride. She's the executive editor of the Westchester County Business Journal, and she's done a few of these debates with me before, and she'll be focusing on a lot of financial issues that is facing the state. Okay. Now, I want to give the rules here so everybody knows what we're going to try and abide by for the next 60 minutes. No audience participation, no catcalls, no questions, and no applause as well. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement that was decided by a coin toss before the program, and Ms. Stewart-Cousins won that opening toss. She'll give the first opening statement, and as per the rules, her opponent will give the first closing statement. Candidates will have a minute and a half to respond to questions posed by the moderators, and there's a timekeeper that will be keeping track of the time and be waving cards here. Thank you very much, Amy. And there will also, as I mentioned, be closing statements, and those closing statements each will be 2 minutes for length. Let's bring in Karen McBride right now, who will pose the first question.
Thank you, Rich.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we begin, let's begin with those opening statements. I'm sorry, Ms. Stewart-Cousins.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the Westchester County Association and, of course, RNN and President Bill Mooney for hosting the event tonight. This discussion is important because it is vital that people have accurate information to make informed decisions when they vote in November. The challenges presented by these difficult economic times have caused anger, frustration, and fear across the nation. There is a call for change, which began during my first election and has gained momentum since. People in the 35th District were ahead of the curve in recognizing the need for change then, and I have worked hard to be the catalyst for change that our electorate is demanding in government now. I challenged the status quo, changed the culture in Albany, and brought reform to our chamber. I have a record of real results. For the 21 months that I have served in the majority, I have worked to enact reforms that will save taxpayers money. Our system was broken when we walked in the door, and when we immediately began to address the realities, we found that the State Business Tax Climate Index ranked New York at 49 out of 50, and that we were billions of dollars in deficit after 40 years of special interest spending and reckless borrowing. Yet the last budget we passed closed the gap and kept spending under the rate of inflation for the 4th time in 30 years. As a member of the Task Force on Government Efficiency and chair of the Local Government Committee, I achieved reforms in our pension system that will save $48.5 billion, passed the first major public authorities reform in 70 years, instituting oversight, accountability, and transparency, uncovered tens of millions in inefficient spending and potential savings for taxpayers, and passed legislation that empowers local government to consolidate and share services. I voted for property tax cap twice to relieve the burden on taxpayers and pass legislation that created and saved 400,000 jobs, strengthened small business, and spurs economic growth and recovery. Rebuilding our state's economy remains the top priority, and the work we have begun will put money back in New Yorkers' pockets.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming here tonight. And I'd like to thank the Westchester County Association, Bill Mooney, and RNN for putting this debate together here tonight. Thank you, Richard and Karen, for being our moderators. And, of course, my opponent, Ms. Stewart-Cousins, thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Albany is broken. We all know it. It's dysfunctional. It's embarrassing. We see it in so many ways. We see it in the consistently late budgets. Legislators who are charged with voting a budget on time and consistently do not do that. We see it every day when we open the newspaper and see the headlines of scandal and corruption. And we see it more importantly maybe in the numbers of our friends, families, and businesses that are leaving our state, going to other states like North Carolina, Arizona, Texas, Florida. My wife, Debbie, and I, we see it very personally. Now, every month as we sit around the dining room table and we balance our own personal budget, try to make ends meet. And it's so difficult to do so, never mind saving for the future. And why is that? It's because we have a government that is deemed the most dysfunctional in the country, that in the worst economic times in decades decides to increase spending by over $14 billion in this legislative cycle, including $12 billion in new taxes. This has to come to an end. This will come to an end, and I'm going to help put it to an end. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a CPA and I'm an attorney. I have an estate planning practice in White Plains, New York, and I'm from Yonkers, New York, just southeast Yonkers, right by the racetrack. I also served for 10 years on the Yonkers City Council and was the budget chair there in Yonkers and brought a strong fiscally conservative message to Yonkers and worked hard to keep spending down, to balance budgets, which is something that the state does not do, and to reduce some of the onerous taxes that were driving businesses and families out of our city. I've worked very hard to do that, and I will bring the same message of fiscal conservatism, reducing spending, cutting taxes, and creating jobs to Albany. Thank you.